Odin's Raven is a simple two-player card game that is now in its second edition, which is this one. I haven't played the first edition, so I cannot compare, but it is because of the second edition that I learned about the game in the first place. I simply saw some pictures of the game floating online, people were sharing them on social media, and I found the game very attractive. It simply was so beautiful, the art was so attractive that on the strength of the art alone I decided to purchase a copy and give it a try. Call me shallow, but I'm not insensitive to beauty, so that's it. So my curiosity is a game that also is valuable as a game, or am I simply purchasing a set of bookmarks, which is what I'll use the cards for if the game is unplayable. Odin's Raven is a two-player game where the players control the mythological ravens that, according to the Norse myth, belong to Odin, and Odin sends them out to the edge of the world to scout the world, and then the ravens go back to Odin to report all the news that they figured out, all the gossip, etc, etc, etc. In the game, you control one or two ravens, you'll fly to the end of the world, which is a track of 16 cards in this game, and go back to kind of where you started from, and the first player that does that is the winner of the game. Again, the question, I can tell you already, this is a game that is very beautiful, but does it also play well? We'll figure it out. We'll discover it in a minute. The game revolves around 5 decks of cards. A super important one is the terrain deck that you use at the beginning of the game to create the track around which the players will race. You shuffle these cards, you draw 16 of them, and you place them in a line, and the way that you see here. Yes, the full line would be longer, but I realized it was hard to capture it all in the screen, so I thought that this would make things easier. So the players control ravens. The pieces are made of wood, fairly light wood. They look good. The light piece, however, got a little bit burned, so it looks like vanilla with some cream caramel on top. This one, straight chocolate. Chocolate. So the ravens will start from one edge of the line of 16 cards, and they will start from different sides. You could put them on the card itself to identify the location where the ravens are, but then cards move around fairly often in the game because of game effects, so it's easier if you place your ravens as you're playing by the location, but that means that the raven is in that location. So the ravens will move around the track. This raven is trying to go to the end of the track, loop around, and go back here and reach the starting area of the other raven before the other raven does the same. Now, I mentioned 5 decks of cards. One is this one, and then we have 2 decks of cards belonging to each player. Each player gets 2 decks of cards. They are shuffled separately, and then you get to draw 5 cards from these 2 decks in any combination that you want. 3 from here, 2 from here, 4 and 1. Doesn't matter, any combination. Suppose that at the beginning I want to draw 4 cards from this deck here and 1 card from this other deck here. This deck is the deck of flight cards representing the landscape areas where I can travel by spending these cards, and these are the Loki cards that allow me to play tricks on the board. To move to an area, all that I need to do with my raven is to produce a card with the matching symbol. You move, oh, there are 2 cards, one on top of the other here. You move by one area at a time, so you need to go here, here, here. Usually you don't skip areas, but I need to produce the corresponding area. So if I have this card when I'm here and I discard it, I'm good. I simply move here, and maybe then I also have this other card in my hand, so I discard it and I keep moving. What if I don't have the right card? Then I can discard any 2 cards in my hand, like this mountain here and the land of Mordor. I can discard any 2 cards and they count as a single card, and maybe then during my turn I'll go back to move efficiently at the rate of 1 location per card. However, again, we have the Loki cards that make the game much more interesting and allow you to throw a wrench in the opponent's plans. And each Loki card has 2 effects, so you choose the one that you're going to implement when you play the card. This one allows you, for example, this effect allows you to move by 1 location, ignoring anything else. This one allows you to rotate a card, very important, to bring a location that you need right in front of you, or maybe to deny the opponent the location that you think they have and they will want to use. This one allows you to remove a card, which is, well, sometimes tricky because it shortens both paths. And this is something that I like very much about the game. There are many effects that you can use to benefit yourself, as you're trying to do, as you should, but if you use them, they also benefit the opponent. So you have to figure out ways of using your tricks, your benefits that could benefit both. You have to figure out a way to use them so they benefit you only, and there are ways of doing so. You have an effect here that allows you to draw 2 cards, or an effect that allows you to add a landscape card and to add a loop. So, for example, this raven here now wouldn't be able to go from here to here. Would have to go through these other 2 locations. That makes that longer, and it's ways of annoying the opponent or getting an advantage without giving an advantage to the opponent. In this case, this raven is going in this direction. I place the loop here. Doesn't hurt me anymore because I passed that location, but when the opponent comes back, we'll have to go through that area there. And the same applies to cases where, for example, you are allowed to remove a card that shortens the path, but maybe it's past a point where the opponent also. You can slide a card due to certain effects that shortens the path only on one side. Other things, as I said, we mentioned the swapping, there are the rotation. There is the swapping, that's super important, allows you to swap 2 cards. And again, you're trying to create a path that is hard for the opponent to navigate and one that is easy for you to navigate, and so on and so forth. So you get to draw from your decks in any combination you want. Your maximum hand is 7, and however, no matter how many cards you play, you only get to draw 3 cards. So if you play a lot of cards the next round, you will have a small card. If you play conservatively and try to think ahead about the next cards and you optimize your hand and the resources that you get, the luck factor in the game, which is a factor nevertheless, is mitigated. There is strategy that will allow you to maximize the effectiveness of your hand over time. The first player that completes the race is the winner of the game. Now, at the beginning, I wasn't all that sold on the game. It seemed to me that it was virtually entirely controlled by luck. On the other hand, I hadn't figured out how to play it yet. I understood the rules, but I hadn't figured out the strategy. So I just tried to go as far as I could each turn. If I found an obstacle, I will burn 2 cards and keep going. As a result, on the beginning, my hand was very small, because I burned all my cards. Then with a simple hand of 3 cards in my hand, maybe 2 normal cards and a lucky card, of course I couldn't do much. And if I got the right cards, then I would be very happy. If I got bad cards, I couldn't do much. So I felt that the luck of the draw was dominating everything. The truth of the matter, however, is different. That there are ways of optimizing your hand, improving your chances, and in particular, simply by looking ahead and not thinking that victory comes to the player that moves every time or moves a lot every time, but the player that creates a hand of cards, maybe over a turn or even 2, that allows that player to move fast and cover a lot of ground and create interesting effects. So actually, as soon as I started building a larger hand of cards and not going to burn them all every time, as soon as I started figuring out ways of optimizing the low-key effects and I wasn't afraid of spending them. This is a game that rewards the players that spend all of their cards. If you have cards left at the end of the game, it's probably because the opponent has played them all and they won and they brought the end of the game earlier than you expected. So don't be shy about spending those. They're such a key element of the game, and they make the game so much interesting, and they make the game more meritocratic. They add an element of strategy that does matter, and that acts as a pleasant counterweight to the lack of the draw, which is still a factor. So in the end, between using the hand of cards, managing your hand of cards wisely, using the effects wisely, the game showed to me that it did have an element of strategy, of decisions that did matter, and that was an interesting force that you would tend to struggle against the randomness that came from the cards that you draw, the order in which you draw the cards, and also came from the effects that the opponent does against you, which are not random because the opponent chooses what they want to do, but to you, since you can't control them, is virtually the same as a random factor outside of your control that you have to react to. Well, sure, actually, you can look at the cards that the opponent is playing, and if they burned a lot of cards over a certain type of terrain, now you know that they don't have many of those left in their deck. Maybe the deck is not that thing. Then you try, as you're swapping cards, maybe all other things being equal, you also try to put that kind of card in front of them, reducing their chances that they will be able to cross it with a single card, with an optimal expenditure of cards. So it turns out that there are more things that you can do around the design that I thought possible at first, and when that happened I warmed up to the design and I found it much more interesting. Mind you, it didn't become hugely complex or incredibly strategic, but that, I don't think that was the purpose of the game to start with. The game is meant to be a light game, it remains a light game, but there's nothing wrong with light games that still give you some decisions, and they don't give you total control over the design, they don't give you great depth, but on the other hand, you have the other advantage of the fact that you're playing a game that doesn't give you a headache, doesn't take 3 hours to set up, doesn't take long to play or to teach. So there's a game that you can teach easily to a lot of different players. As long as you warn them, don't feel discouraged if at the beginning you feel that the game is playing you, the lack of the draw is playing the game instead of you. Give it some time, give it a game or two, see how the effects work, and then you'll start seeing it. You start seeing something, the elements of the game will go together better, and it will become an interesting game in which you are interacting with a changing board, you're interacting with a changing set of cards. There are several factors that you take into account that make the game interesting without burdening you with too many decisions, without burdening you with too much thinking that would make the game heavier than it should be. It is not a game that overstates its welcome. It is a game that I would say it's definitely pleasant and fun to play. It's also incredibly beautiful, that does not hurt, but overall it is a nice filler, a good opener for a game night, a good filler to play between other games. If you want to make it portable, you can give up the beautiful box. All the cards will fit in a much smaller bag that you can easily carry with you. A small plastic sandwich bag would contain easily all the elements of the game, all the components. It's a nice game. I'm happy I gave it a try. You can't judge a book by the cover. You can't judge a game by the cover. In this case, luckily enough, the cover, which is beautiful, turned out to mirror quite well a design which is simple, elegant, but very pleasant, and yes, beautiful in the light fun, the light entertainment, but still good entertainment that it can offer.